Hi guys, my name is Ramsey and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have another episode on some of the fundamental nodes in n8n. Last episode we discussed the if node. And if you remember very clearly, we did the invoice reminder. You can actually watch that over here. But you remember we would have like binary choices, like checking if an invoice status is unpaid or paid, and also comparing dates, and we did try to achieve some level of complexity with that. Well, today we're going to look at the if node's brother, the switch node. And the switch node is probably better than the if node for certain circumstances. Now, if you have like a binary choosing between one thing and another, the if node makes sense. But if you have lots of different conditions and you were trying to chain if nodes, this is something that you might find yourself doing from time to time, especially when you're prototyping. Then you get what I like to call the staircase of doom. Basically, it's just this cascading list of if nodes, which can be difficult to debug and quite frankly doesn't look very nice. And also, it can be simplified. You can actually think of the if node as more useful when you have like a fork down the road, or when you have multiple variables that you want to check, so you want to chain conditions together. But we'll get back to that in a bit. The switch node, on the other hand, is more of a traffic cop, basically directing data in different directions to different outputs based on the data meeting certain conditions or values, right? So, well, here I say it's a roundabout, but it's also more like a traffic cop, as you can see here. In fact, I did a demo of this just to show you the idea, where we have, say, an email coming in, and depending on what's in the subject line, it can go to the sales team, or it can go to the support team, or the billing team, or just some kind of general Slack channel. In this case, ideally for this, you would want to have a Gmail trigger just in the side. So that would be, where is it? Right here under triggers. That will be on message received, and will be polling every minute maybe, or something like that. I don't know if they have seconds, but they do have like a custom option. And then, you know, that could be your trigger right here. But the thing about it is that I would have to activate this workflow, and since it's a very simple demo, I thought I might just have a manual trigger. So just to explain a bit of about what's happening. Now in this case, I did send myself some emails actually, so I'm just checking under get incoming emails. Of course, I've connected my credentials. I'm just checking that for emails that I've sent myself. In fact, if you check my email here, you'll see that I did send myself an email with the subject line sales and the text, this is a sales message. So just as a test of that, it kind of looks ridiculous now, but it was good for a test. So if I click on, say this, it's automatically going to trigger. It's going to pick that particular email, I believe. I did add a limit of 1 just for testing purposes, and I do get the email. Now, usually I try to uncheck simplify here, because if you simplify, you do get a much smaller data payload, where it mostly gives you a snippet of the message and a few other things. That's not very helpful when you're chaining complex automations together. So I usually turn that off, and it just allows me to get a lot more data, like even the HTML text and text as HTML of the email, and a lot of other things, right? And then the first if node is going to check if the subject, when converted to lowercase and trimmed, this is just like a JavaScript expression here. And you will get the workflow JSON as well if you want to like play with this later on, whether it contains the word sales. And if so, then it goes to the sales Slack channel, which is a channel that I made over here. As you can see, I have sales right here. So this helps. And then if it's not, it does the second check, which is to see if the subject has the word support, after which it sends to the support Slack channel. And then if not, it has, you know, one that checks for billing, and then it sends to billing. And if it's none of these three, it goes to a general Slack channel. And you can see we have like messages in here, like random new message, no idea, check it out, with the text from the email. Or under billing, it's new billing email received, text is, and then the text from the email. And support is about support, and so on and so forth. As you can see the staircase of doom here. You can see how it cascades, and it looks very, a little too complicated for my taste personally. I don't know about you, but it's also going to be very hard to debug later on. On the other hand, you can use the switch node, which is exactly what I do here, right? Same scenario, but now instead of this cascading layers, you have this general router. So again, I mean, if I were to move, I just have like, because you're allowed only one trigger node per workflow. When I was building this, I was moving things that way. Like for example, if I were to play this one, I'm sure it will work. Let me just try it. And you can see the messages coming in. Though I don't know if that's very necessary, but if I just do this, it should be able to send directly to the Slack sales channel. And you can see it says new sales email received. On the other hand, if I take it here, it'll work the same, but it's going to be a little simpler. And I'm going to show you before I run it, right? So you've got the switch node. It has 4 outputs. So one is for sales. This is the same logic as from the if nodes, just put in one place. One is for support, the other one billing, and then we have a fallback output, which is usually an option under options. So you just choose a fallback output and give it its own extra output. So you can either have no outputs where you ignore the fallback, the other scenario, or you can have the extra output. And when you run that, you know, you've got like, it connects to the same sales channels as the if nodes. But it's a lot neater, a lot easier to debug because everything is in one place. It handles the case of multiple conditions better, so it looks much better, right? And if I trigger this, you're going to see that it's going to run and it will go to sales. Again, same thing. But I would advise you, before you go and try switch nodes everywhere, to actually consider when it is useful versus when it isn't. So, switch node is useful when you are doing routing. Like, for example, depending on the lead status or the status of an activity, like a project task. Like, a lead status could be qualified, won, lost, etc. So where is it going in the CRM if you have a CRM? In that case, the switch node might make sense. Or when you're file sorting, maybe your PDF files go in Drive and your CSV files go in Sheets and JPEG files go in Slack or what have you. When you're giving tiered support, like if a client is VIP, they get SMS support. If they're pro, they get email support, and so on and so forth. Or even localization. Just basically where you have multiple possible values of the same variable. Then in that case, the switch node is okay to use. But if you don't have that, there are other situations where you can't use it. Like for example, if you're dealing with multiple variables. So one thing about the invoice reminder video you'll notice is that we would check both the status and the due date. As you can see here, we would have to check the status being unpaid and the due date being today. And we would chain them with an and or operator. So when you have more than one variable, the switch node is actually not very good at handling that, because as you can see, it doesn't have and or operators or any of that. So for that, you're probably better off using an if node or using a code node, whichever fits the situation better. Another one is like having multiple switch cases. Like for example, let's say you're routing things to all the 50 states of the USA, or you know, you have I don't know, all counties in Kenya. That's where I'm from. Or you have like a bunch of other things. In that case, you don't want like 50 different outputs in your switch node. It's going to look ugly, just like the if node does when you overuse it. In that case, you want a lookup table. So maybe you have like a Google sheet or something else with all the states, and you can like map states to emails using the lookup table. Like if the email is this address and probably belongs to this state, like, or you go search the email in Google or Google Sheets or something like that. Like basically you can have like a static store of the data that you're trying to map, and then use lookup functions like the Google search get rows operation on the Google Sheets node, right? You also don't want it when you're dealing with ranges. Like, are you checking if something is between 10 and 20, right? So you would say that if you have a range, you're probably going to need an if node to check the lower and upper bounds, or a code node to, you know, do even more complex stuff. in that case, the if node isn't the switch node isn't very useful. So there are specific cases where the if node does beat the switch node, like with multivariate logic, multiple variables. And there are places where the switch node beats the if node, like when you have multiple possible values or multiple conditions of the same variable. And then there are places where both of them don't work, right? Because if you'll notice, in this little automation, the switch node is checking for an exact or containing an exact word. Is it sales? Is it support? Etc. And maybe the if nodes would have done the same. Actually, they do the same as well. But what if the message doesn't explicitly say sales, but it is a sales message? Well, then in that case, the deterministic nature of the switch node and the if node kind of gets in the way. What you need is something that can intelligently digest the message and then decide whether it should be sales or whatever. And in that case, we get to the big brother of all of these, the text classifier. But we're going to cover that in a future video. So we've done the if node, now we've done the switch node. Next, we're going to go to an even a more intelligent version of both of them, known as a text classifier. So I can't wait to do it with you guys again. Let me know what you think about the episode in the comments and what other nodes, commonly used nodes in n8n you'd like to cover. And we'll talk more in the next episode. Until then, bye-bye.